All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I know it's been a few months since we have done this. We are excited to be here with you. We are going to go ahead and start off with the Leemon portion, and then we will jump into some of the questions for Mance. But as usual, we will give folks a little bit of time to hop on. And for those who are new here, welcome. We'd love to see in the chat where everyone is from. I see the first folks are from Cork, Ireland. Very nice, beautiful country. Big Sky, Montana, France. Love it.
I used to live in Madison, Wisconsin. Here's Mance. France, Ottawa, Philippines. Welcome everyone. East Texas. I've heard of that state. Belgium.
Is that different from Texas, Leemon?
No, Texas is big. India, Slovenia. Very cool. Johannesburg. I assume that's what Joburg is. Welcome. Netherlands. I love it. Russia, Switzerland. I love you guys. You are from all over the world. It is fantastic. Wales, India, Madrid, Beijing, Ivy League, New Haven, Connecticut. Interesting. I didn't know there was a city with that name. Norway, good country. Texas, again, a state I've heard of. I'm joking. I live in Texas right now, though I have lived many places. Papa Baird. Okay. Hong Kong. Hello. India. Hello from the Great Lakes, Michigan. You must be coming from a boat. Cape Town, South Africa. Did you guys all hear the announcement yesterday, what we're doing in Africa? Irish living in Boston. Wow, I've lived in Boston, but I've not lived in Ireland. Welcome. I love this. Istanbul. We have so many different people. Thailand. I love this. I'm from Hedera, my favorite stan. Leemon, we've missed you. I've missed you too. Good to be back with you. All right. Well, shall we get started?
I think we shall.
Okay. I love this. I live in the Hedera section of the Metaverse. Very cool. We should talk about that sometime. Talk more about Metaverse. Sorry. Anyway, we should go.
All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started. We are a few minutes past the top of the hour. As you all have seen, it has been a busy time at Hedera, but that is nothing new. So we will go ahead and jump into the questions. I do want to remind the folks who might be new to the town hall, we typically take these questions we solicit feedback, we gather them, and then we usually have more than we can get through. So the ones that are submitted through the form are the ones that we try to get through. We also kind of dedupe if there are things that you have asked that can be found on the website or other content and collateral, we would ask that you find that there, and we'll point you back to that, because we do want to try to make these new and different and try to answer questions that have not been asked previously. So Leemon, the first one goes to you. This is from a moderator of the Hashgraph thread on Reddit. And one of the most common questions that they get is about creating an account ID. Why does there need to be a transaction fee to make an ID on Hedera, and how can networks such as Bitcoin and Ether support not having one?
I love the question. We have a HIP right now to allow automatic account creation, which does something equivalent. So here's the thing to remember. For any ledger, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, if you're going to create something that is part of the blockchain, if it's going to be stored for eternity on all the computers that have the blockchain, you have to pay for it. Now, if you just do something on your own computer, you don't talk to anyone, you don't have to pay for that. Nobody would even know that you're doing it. They couldn't even charge you. The same is true for us. If you want to create a key, you can create a key. You don't have to pay for that, and no one even knows you've done so. But if you want to create something that is stored on the Hedera ledger for eternity, and the mirror nodes have to store it for eternity, then you pay for that. There's a transaction to do that. And so what happens is that if you want to create a key, you can do that anytime you want. You don't pay anything. But when you want to actually create an account that's going to be stored and that we're going to remember it, then you do a transaction that creates it. So it's actually the same as Bitcoin and Ethereum, but it looks different. Because in Bitcoin and Ethereum, your key itself is like your account. And so you have, in some sense, created your account, even though you haven't actually put anything into the blockchain and haven't actually talked to the blockchain. With this HIP, you'll be able to create your key, and your key itself, the public key, can count as an alias to an account. It will be treated as if it is an account. And of course, you don't yet have an account on Hedera. It's not actually being stored on the ledger, so you don't get charged anything. There's no transaction involved. So you can just create a public key, you give it to people, and then those people could send HBARs to that account. And the first one to do so actually creates the account in the process. So that would make it exactly like Bitcoin and Ethereum. So the difference between us and them has been just cosmetic in the past. And with this HIP, even that goes away. And so you can use that public key that you create on your own as if it were an account number. And the first time somebody sends you something, it turns into a real account. And then you can continue to use it as an alias, or you can use that nice short account number that we give you. Our account numbers are really short compared to a gigantic public key, but you'll have a choice. Do it either way. So that's a HIP, and that will be coming in the code. And I think that'll be a good thing. It'll make you, it gives you all the advantages of having created an account for free by yourself without talking to anyone, without even an internet connection.
Thanks, Leemon. The HIP process is amazing. Okay, another one for you, Leemon. Does the HBAR treasury account have the right to freeze, wipe, or delete any other HBAR mainnet account?
No. So let's say this again. You have accounts, and your accounts can hold HBARs, they can hold tokens. These tokens can be minted by someone, and when they mint it, they create whether they have the ability to freeze it or not, or to claw it back from you or not. All these different things they can do, where they can mint more, or they have a fixed money supply. All those things are part of the definition. And some people will create one that has all these powers, and you'll know it. Maybe you don't want to buy those. And other people will create them without those powers, where you have more freedom, and maybe you'll buy those. It's up to you. But what about the underlying account itself, the HBAR account? Does Hedera have the ability to reach out and freeze it, or take HBARs out of it? Or for that matter, do we have the ability to reach out to tokens and freeze tokens, or take tokens out of your account? No. Hedera account 2 has various powers. The keys on it have various powers on the network. That is not one of them. By intent, this is intended to be a trusted network where you can store things of value on it, and you know that they're not going to mysteriously disappear just because account 2 signed off on it. So that's a powerful thing. That's an important thing. And so you have that security.
All right. We're gonna do a rapid fire with Leemon here for just a few. Can a wallet running on Hedera be wrapped by an NFT using the token service?
So using the token service, you can create tokens. These tokens can represent things of value, including wrapping other tokens. So it could be a token from another ledger that's wrapping in some sense. It could be a stable coin that's in some sense wrapping some fiat. You can do all sorts of things. The token service supports that. And if you want to do more complicated forms of wrapping, or more complicated rules on your wrapped token, your token that is wrapping something, then you can integrate with smart contracts. And that's what's coming out very soon, the smart contracts 2.0, where they're faster and they allow this kind of integration with each HTS. And so when you want to create the token and transfer it to people, you're doing it just at the native layer, 10,000 transactions per second. But when you want to do something really complicated and run some complicated logic, you can do that too. So that's what we will be rolling out soon.
Great. All right. And then another one, Leemon. Currently, to run a node, it requires expensive hardware and at least 1 gig internet connection. How do you get from this to be able to run a node on, say, a cell phone? Hedera only runs as fast as its slowest node. Permissionless nodes will presumably require lower hardware and networking specs, so more people and nodes can participate in consensus. Are these underlying assumptions correct? Will the speed of the network be affected if there are lower hardware and network requirements for a node?
Oh, so the mainnet shouldn't be running on cell phones, because you turn your cell phone off and you go out of range and you go through dead spots. You wouldn't want the node constantly coming up and down. But we really want nodes that are going to stay up for at least a day at a time would be ideal. A node really isn't helping the network much if it's constantly jumping on and jumping back off. And then if it's off for a while, it has to do a reconnect. So it downloads the data from the other nodes. You don't want to be doing that throughout the day. So you wouldn't want to use a cell phone for a mainnet node, not for a mainnet node. Now there's the other question. What about app nets? What about L2 nets? What about private nets that somehow connect to Hedera? For that, you might use a cell phone. And the Hashgraph algorithm is so lightweight, you could easily run that on a cell phone. But for the mainnet, you wouldn't want to use cell phones. You want to use desktops that are going to stay on all day. And so I don't think that's a problem. You can get gigabit at your home and you can get it at your work, and it's not too much of a problem to get gigabit. And you're right, the network is as slow as its slowest computer. So we need good computers. But you can do that.
All right. And then one more rapid fire, Leemon, and then we're gonna let Mance have some of the fun here too. Thinking about aBFT, when governing council members run nodes in the cloud, is there a concern if they are running in different countries in order to mitigate things like China banning Bitcoin?
Oh yes, you are right. So not only do we say our nodes need to be in different countries, they also have to be in different continents, but they also have to be in different cloud providers. If you had a single cloud provider that was running all the nodes, then even if they were in different countries on different continents, you still have the problem that the CEO of that company has the ability to reach out and do bad things. And some ledgers have problems with this. But what we have done is said, no, we have hard requirements. You can't have too many on the same continent, but you also can't have too many using the same cloud provider. Even if they went to different continents, you still can't have everybody in a single cloud provider. And that's for security reasons of just like what you're talking about. If that cloud provider could shut down all those nodes and that would hurt the network, that's bad. And so we force people to decentralize across what cloud provider they're using, or they run their own hardware, which is even better, or they co-located, which is with a separate company. You can't have one co-locating company running all the nodes. They have to be separated, and they have to be in different countries. They have to be on different continents, under different governments, as separated as we can. So yes, that is a hard requirement that we have. It's important.
Thanks, Leemon. All right, Mance, I know you have had a busy morning already. We will get to that a little bit later. For those of you who didn't get to tune in, Mance was on CoinDesk TV just a little bit ago talking about the proof of concept with Shinhan Bank, and we will talk about that in a bit. But Mance, you know, as we think about that as sort of one example, what are network effects, or what network effects do you think will emerge from enterprise adoption of Hedera?
Yeah. So, you know, we are seeing both viral effects and network effects. And let me paint the distinction or draw the distinction between the two. A viral effect is simply when you have some kind of use case or some use of the network, and others see how the network is being used and they decide to use it in the same way. A good example of this is ServiceNow, right? We just announced the relationship, the partnership. ServiceNow has joined the organization as the newest council member. For those of you that haven't heard of ServiceNow, it's not a brand that maybe has the brand recognition of some of the other organizations, but it is absolutely one of the most important companies in the world. They have 130 billion market cap. They are creating or in the business of enabling digital workflows for organizations. It's in the back office of all the biggest companies in the world. And so when ServiceNow decides to join the council and announce that they are doing all of these various things to integrate our platform with their platform, their Now platform, that serves as a lighthouse organization or a lighthouse customer, if you will, for other organizations similar to them, right? This is precisely what you want to happen to drive viral effects in the use of the network. When you talk about network effects, where we make the distinction in that anybody that creates something on the network that is going to result in all future users of the network, or most of the future users of the network, deriving value from the network as well from that initial use case, then that's a network effect. The more people that use it in a certain way, the more value is to others that would consider using it in the same way. Hashport is a good example of this. So more people that use Hashport with us, the more value there is for others to use it, and that drives network effects for the network. Stable coins will fall into this category, and Zenobia has already touched on it. We did announce in the last 12 hours that Shinhan has completed a POC with stable coins, and in this case, international remittances. So yes, I absolutely see that the use cases that are being talked about now, some for the very first time and others that will be, as well as those that already have been, that were created in the first couple of years of the network usage, will drive both viral effects and network effects for the network.
Great. And then Mance, I'm going to rapid fire here a few at you. We're going to context switch a bit.
Okay.
We've talked about sort of enterprise and there's a ton that's going on there. I'm sort of purposely context switching because we also have a lot going on with artists and NFTs and an amazing creator universe there. So I think it's important for us to highlight that enterprise is really important for Hedera, and we've really seen a lot of traction there. Artists, NFTs, community, also really important for Hedera. So if we have someone who has an artist that wants to get in touch with Hedera to help them figure out, what to do with their music or their visual arts or other things, what do you say to them?
Yeah. Well, so before giving this answer, I asked for permission to do so, and Christian granted it. The simplest thing here is just to give out an email address. And so we're going to give out Christian's email address. Of course, Christian is the chief marketing officer for the organization. So I don't know, Zenobia, whether it's you or somebody else that's going to post Christian's email address here, but I think it's just Christian@hedera.com, right? So Christian@hedera.com. If you want to do something along these lines, shoot him a note and he'll help you out.
And he's also on Twitter at all hours of the day. So hit him up either way. All right. Yes. And I think, thank you for posting that in the chat, team. Okay. As we think about, again, we've also got parts of the ecosystem going on. We certainly have some exciting things going on at the foundation. A question that we have gotten a few times, and I think it's important for us to sort of share this, is what's the relationship between Hedera and Immutable Holdings?
Okay. So let me take a step back and address it at the 50,000 foot level, and then I can drill in. The vision from the beginning is that we would be a decentralized ecosystem, a network, a decentralized network with a broad ecosystem of participants and contributors. So that's been the vision from the very beginning. And when we see some folks leave the organization to go do their own thing, then that's all good for achieving the vision, right? It's good for us to see the progress of folks who've been both part of Hedera and now have moved on to something else that is inside the Hedera ecosystem or participating in the Hedera ecosystem. Jordan and Immutable Holdings is precisely that, right? So Immutable Holdings is not directly associated with Hedera. Of course, Immutable is in the ecosystem. It's not the case that Hedera has an interest, a financial interest. It's not like Hedera owns any portion of Immutable. Immutable is standalone. It's Jordan's gig, and so, but the relationship, of course, is there. And Jordan, as you all know, or many of you know, Jordan helped to create Hedera and make it into what it is today. He was part of the founding team and created an awful lot of value in helping us to stand up the organization in various ways. And now he's gone off and done his own thing with Immutable. Other examples exist, like Cooper and Paul Madsen, who were part of Hedera, have now moved on to Galaxy, and they're part of the Galaxy team. They're working with Hedera. And when we created the HBAR Foundation, a number of people inside Hedera, basically most of the business development team, have moved away from Hedera and moved into the foundation. In all of these cases, there is at least an arm's length relationship. And of course, the foundation is a little bit unique if we're looking at just the three in terms of Immutable and Galaxy and the foundation. But they're standalone, independent organizations. We don't govern them. We don't control them. We don't have a stake, a financial, legal stake in their cap tables or in those organizations.
Thanks, Mance. And, for those who have followed Silicon Valley lore for a long time, the Netscape Mafia and the PayPal Mafia, if you look at the things that those alumni have gone on to do, I hope that someday we will be talking about the Hedera Mafia and seeing those effects across the industry.
Yep.
Okay, Mance, there have been some Twitter accounts voicing concern over the change in circulating supply, and the council approved $4.4 billion HBAR budget for the second half of this year. I think this is a good one to be able to provide some clarity on how are the tokens being sold? Are they sold directly on exchanges? Do they have any lockup periods?
Okay. So I'm looking at this again, the question, and I think this is not referring to the foundation. This is just talking about the budget for HBAR. All right. Actually, Zenobia, I'm going to touch on the answer here, and I think we come back to this question a little later. So we may have some duplication here in the answers. There is a budget, of course, of HBAR, and the HBAR budget that we're talking about with respect to the council and the organization, independent of the foundation, primarily is there to pay RCUs and other obligations, SAFT obligations. So if there have been investors in HBAR over the years, and then there are the employees. And so when we talk about the HBAR budget, and I don't know if this number is accurate, so I'm not swearing to the 4.4 billion, I'm just taking it faith that this is an accurate number for H2 of 2021. The way those get paid out is what you would expect. If they're being paid out to the investors, then they just get released on schedule on a monthly basis for most of the SAFT holders and the token purchase agreement participants. And for the employees that are receiving RCUs, then those get released to the employees on a monthly basis. It's not the case that Hedera is taking HBAR and selling them directly into the market to capitalize the organization, in other words, to raise cash to pay salaries and other operating expenses of the organization. That doesn't happen, with the caveat of taxes. And I think we're going to come back to that in a question that's a little bit later here. We
can address that now, Mance, if you'd like. I know there's there were some questions around, are we selling for tax purposes, and sort of how does that work?
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's just dive into that then. So of course, Hedera has employees like any other company, and Hedera pays those employees a mixture of cash and tokens, and we call them RCUs, restricted coin units. And similar, sort of by analogy, you could think of them as restricted stock units. And in a similar way, there's a withholding requirement for the RCUs on behalf of the employees. So Hedera, on a monthly basis, when it's preparing to pay the employees their restricted coin units, their RCUs, it withholds the appropriate number of coins to cover the taxes for those employees. And then it immediately pays cash out of our cash accounts directly to the IRS. We're primarily talking about US-based employees in this case. So it pays the cash that's required to the IRS. It then takes those coins that have been withheld and slowly over time does sell those coins into the market, but not directly into the market through exchanges. So there is a third party, and I'm glad that we have the opportunity to discuss this, because I know there's been a lot of confusion and speculation in the market about how this works and what's going on. It's not the case that Hedera does anything to time the market in selling these coins to recoup the cash needed to pay the taxes. There's a third party that Hedera partners with to sell the coins to, and then on a daily basis, that third party sells a small number of coins, the same number of coins every day. And it really doesn't matter what is going on in the market. There is absolutely zero timing of the market in the selling of these tokens into the market to recoup the costs of the taxes. And that's it. I realize that there has been a lot of chatter, and some people have sort of speculated that Hedera is selling into bull runs, or the increasing in the token price. It's just simply not true. It's totally inaccurate. There's zero timing of the market, and the number of coins is kept relatively small and sold every day to recoup these costs associated with the taxes.
Right. So people are seeing the motion of coins to that third party in tranches, which are sort of arbitrarily timed, but that third party is selling each day the same amount. So there is no market timing going on.
Correct. And I think that that's the important point, is that the transfer of those tokens to that third party, it is arbitrary, totally arbitrary and irrelevant, because it's not the sale of the tokens into the market with the transfer of those tokens to the third party.
All right. Thank you. I think that was important to help clarify for the community. Mance, you have previously talked about step functions that would take the crypto space by surprise, where TPS would increase drastically. Were you talking about Hedera specifically, or the DLT space in general?
I am talking about Hedera specifically. I'm not talking about the market in general. I'm talking about Hedera. What is difficult is to understand exactly when this is going to happen. And so, one of the things that I do, and that you can do as well, is look at what's happening on testnet. It's often the case that you'll see the results of potential users and partners that are testing their platforms on testnet. And when they decide to actually go to market with those and see that step function and usage is opaque often to us here in the organization. We don't build those solutions. The users, the partners are the ones that are building those solutions, and they're making the decisions about when to take them to market. But yes, I do anticipate a step function. And I mean that with respect to Hedera, not the market at large.
All right. Exciting stuff. Leemon, next one for you. Am I correct in thinking that the way DLTs operate in general, not just Hedera, with equally privileged peers distributed around the globe, and without the need to trust any single node, is also the same principle behind the Hedera Governing Council? And the context here is we hear criticism of the council for having large corporations on board, but surely if the critics understand what makes DLTs themselves so revolutionary, they can understand why the governing council is no different. Google or IBM are no more privileged than Magalu or UCL or IIT. They all have equal votes. Is this correct?
Yes, that's a good way of putting it too. It's a good way of looking at it. So there we go. The camera didn't switch over. So the whole point of distributed ledgers, this is the whole point of our field, is that you don't have to trust one person. Now, it's always the case that if all the computers were malicious, they could do anything arbitrarily bad that they wanted to. But you're saying, look, it's hard for that many of them to come together and do something malicious, and I never have to trust any one person, therefore I trust the whole ledger. That's all blockchains, all DLTs are built on that principle. It isn't that I don't have to trust anything. If every single mainnet node were evil, then you'd have problems for any ledger. But that's not going to happen, and that's the point. And so what you want is for there to be lots of nodes distributed, not all owned by one person. Ideally, you wouldn't want a dozen mining pools in China to control everything, but maybe that's spreading out for some ledgers. But for us, we've made sure the nodes, I mentioned that earlier, are spread around the world. But the governance is equally important. The governance also has to be spread around the world. The governance also needs to be a large number of players that you're not going to have all of them being malicious at once. So if Hedera were run by a single council member, I would not trust it. I wouldn't trust any single council member. If it were run by me, I wouldn't consider it trustworthy in anyone else's eyes. But it's not. It's run by 25 different council members who care about their reputations. And anything they do, they will get caught. Because of its nature, they can't do anything in secret. And they don't even try. They publish the meeting minutes of their discussions with each other. So it's all very transparent. And so yes, if you picked one council member and had them run everything and control the whole network, I wouldn't trust it. But with 25 different ones in different industries, on different continents, in different countries, under different governments, that's trustworthy. And that's more trustworthy than having a bunch of people you don't really know that in smoke-filled rooms decide what's going to happen to a network. This is the kind of transparency of governance that every ledger should aspire to. This is what we need if we're going to trust a ledger. And so if you want the computers to be spread out, you also want the governance to be spread out in a similar way, and you want transparency. So that's what we're doing. Good point. Whoever said that, that was a good point.
All right, thanks, Leemon. Mance, you touched on the foundation a little bit as part of our ongoing decentralization. But we do get questions about the relationship there, and then more specifically, what controls does Hedera have over the HBAR Foundation? Mm-hmm.
So first off, the foundation is truly independent of Hedera. It's a different organization legally, structurally. It's not the case, for example, that Hedera has a voting seat on the board of the foundation. And it's not the case that we in Hedera are sitting side by side with those that are in the foundation, trying to convince them to fund or not fund any given project. We don't do that. We won't do that. And so we're happy to make introductions, by the way, to the foundation. We don't do anything to try and influence them directly to, or even indirectly to either fund or not fund any given project. So the foundation is independent. Now, the grant did come along with a grant agreement, the grant of the HBAR from the council to the foundation. And the grant agreement laid out what the point of the grant was, what the use of the grant HBAR should be. And so in broad strokes, the grant agreement outlined that the foundation is required to use the HBAR for the betterment of the Hedera ecosystem, the growth and expansion of the Hedera ecosystem. Now, I've said in just a few words what was said in a grant agreement of, I don't know, 100 pages, right? And so there is more detail there than what I'm describing, but the gist is exactly what I've said. The foundation exists for the purpose of growing the Hedera ecosystem. And it has guardrails, if you will, on the use of its tokens. They can only be used for the growth of the Hedera ecosystem. So if you're asking about controls in particular, that's the extent. The extent of the controls are in the grant agreement, and I view them as guardrails to ensure that the foundation is using the HBAR for growing the Hedera ecosystem. That's it.
All right. Yes. Vision to grow the ecosystem, utmost importance. Leemon, interoperability has been a topic for a while now, and this person is seeing various options from multiple DLTs and blockchains, which seems counterproductive. Is there a standard being developed, and what is your and Hedera's viewpoint and solution for interoperability going forward?
Yeah. So this is the future of ledgers, is interoperability, obviously. Lots of people are working on standards. You know, they say standards are great. That's why there's so many of them. Of course, that's not very good, but we'll eventually get to a smaller number of standards that are universal. But you know, it takes time to get to that point. What's important, though, is that interledger operability is very important. Hashport doing this with us is extremely exciting. And even things like oracles with Chainlink is very exciting. There's a lot of interesting ways for ledgers, for Hedera, to connect to other ledgers, to connect to the outside world, to allow atomic transfers of things between ledgers and wrapping of coins from one ledger on another ledger, all of that stuff. These are incredibly important things. So what we are doing is working with people like Hashport, who are building ways to bridge between us and others. We are working with groups that are doing standards. We will be continuing to support such things. We will be proposing new ways of interacting between ledgers. And ultimately, I think that we will end up with a world where everyone can interoperate very easily with this, a small number of standards. But there's always chaos in getting there. And so we are doing everything we can to help the world get past the chaos stage as soon as possible, and to actually do it in good ways. And the world will get there. We'll be doing all sorts of things with state proofs and with our sharding, and that will also suggest other ways of doing interledger communication. So stay tuned on all of that. I think that we'll have some very interesting things to bring to the table on this. But lots of exciting work going on right now. Interoperability is obviously important. If everyone is a little island and isolated from everyone else, that's not as good as if we're all connected. That's why we have an internet, not just individual networks, but an internetwork that connects everything. That's where we're headed.
Exciting. Thanks, Leemon. Mance, another question for you on the foundation, and just to get a little bit more granular, how will the funds dedicated to the development of the HBAR ecosystem, both for the foundation and otherwise, be distributed? Is there a specific schedule, or is there a specific amount of coins that will be deployed for new projects each year?
So for the foundation, I think this is referring to the foundation. For the foundation, it's up to them. Now, having said that, the way it's going to work practically is that the foundation is going to look for quality projects. And when they see a quality project and there's an opportunity to partner with that project, to help grow the ecosystem, use the platform, maybe build tools and utilities and other components that will help build out the ecosystem. You just imagine all the different ways, all the different points of integration, if you will, into the ecosystem. The foundation has the mandate to go and do that, but they also have the same interest that you all have. And they want to make sure that they do it in a wise way So what I would personally not anticipate, I would be very surprised by, is if the foundation were to turn around and take the coins that we've given to them and fund, I don't know, 100 projects with those coins all in year one, and all the coins are gone by the end of the first year. I just don't think that it practically would work that way or could work that way if they're making reasonable decisions on the projects they're choosing to maximize the growth of the ecosystem. You can think of it sort of like a VC fund, right? VC funds take years and sometimes many years to put to work the funds that they've collected, when raising money for the fund in the first place. And this is going to be something along those lines. So is there a rigid schedule of X number of coins need to be invested, if you will, with partners or opportunities in the network in year one, and then again in 2, 3, and 4? Not to my knowledge, but I'm not part of the foundation. And so as the foundation grows and matures in their operations, maybe they'll end up having some guidelines that they internally are operating under, but that's not Hedera. And so I do expect that we will over time hear from the foundation more and more about the work that they're doing. I think they're going to be transparent with the community about their operations and their plans and that sort of thing. But that's the way to view it. It's like it's a big fund, and those HBAR need to be put to work over time, and probably very many years.
All right. Thank you, Mance. Leemon, we have someone here who is fairly new to the crypto DLT world and wants to know what you say to people who claim the energy used for Bitcoin mining and proof of work systems is a myth and does not use a lot of energy. And they linked to a YouTube video, but noted that the YouTube author or video blogger was not able to provide any proof of those claims.
Welcome to the internet. Okay. Yes. So I know people say things on the internet and then refuse when you ask them for proof and evidence. Let's not worry about such people. What has happened is there are lots of third-party publications that say, here is the energy usage of different ledgers. They go through their methodology. They tell you where they get their numbers from. They show you their equations and what their calculations are and how they get it. A number of these have been published, and they say that Hedera is very low energy and that proof of work systems are very high energy. On theoretical grounds, you would assume that'd be the case, since the whole point of a proof of work system is to do a proof of work, which means lots of computation, which ends up being a lot of energy. So sure, Bitcoin uses more energy than Ireland. That's a lot of energy. It is better to have your security come from the math rather than from how much electricity you burn. And you have a choice. In a proof of stake system, the security, if it's aBFT, is coming from the mathematics, but not from the amount of electricity you burn. And the scarce resource is what you're staking, as opposed to intentionally destroying electricity. So there's different choices of how you can design a network. And yes, I know people will say things and then refuse to give you evidence for them on the internet. And that is sad. But if you read the peer-reviewed papers, if you read papers that give you their methodology, they say, sure, these proof of work systems use a lot of energy and Hedera uses very, very little energy. And I'll point out that we're also carbon neutral, actually carbon negative, because we buy carbon offsets. So what little electricity we use, we actually offset. So yeah, that's the nature of the internet. People will say things. I don't get too worried about people saying crazy things.
Gosh, Leemon, it almost seems like we need a trust layer of the internet for things that are important.
That would be nice, yes. Something, know that everyone will see the same thing, digitally sign it, yeah. Good use.
All right, Leemon, can you talk a little bit about sharding and how it will work? Will it be totally abstracted away from users of the platform? Will smart contracts have to be written to account for sharded architecture, for example?
It is abstracted. So if I send you some HBARs or I send you some tokens, my account is 0.0.1000 and yours is 0.0.2000. The way it works is I sign a transaction, I submit it to the network, and the HBARs go to you. That's how it works today. What if you're in a different shard? Well, then your account number won't be 0.0.2000. It might be 1.0.2000 because you're in shard 1. That's your address. Other than that, it's all the same. Now I just have a single transaction that says send from 0.0.1000 to 1.0.2000, and it goes through. So that it is completely transparent. It's just that your account ID says what shard you're in. When you look at the receipt and the record that comes back afterwards, right now, what you get is a record that says, yes, it went through. You have lost some HBARs, he has gained some HBARs, or you've given up some tokens, she's gained some tokens. The record says that, or it says your transaction failed, nothing changed. In a sharded system, the record ends up looking slightly different. You get one record, you get two records. So the first record says, yes, your side of the transaction went through. So it has been deducted from you. I don't yet know about the other side. So I know it's been deducted from you, but I don't know if the other person has received it yet. Maybe they don't receive it because their account doesn't exist. Or maybe they can't receive it because they have receiver signature required and turned on and they didn't sign it. For whatever reason, it might fail. But you get the first record that says, yep, your half of it succeeded. And then later there will be a second record that says, oh, the second half also succeeded, yay. Or that says the second half failed and what you sent has been refunded to you. So that's really the only difference. The transaction does not change at all. It is completely invisible that you're using sharding, except now your account numbers have a 1 at the beginning or a 2 or a 3 rather than a 0. And for records, it will be 2 records rather than 1 record. But other than that, it's pretty much the same thing that you have now. Consensus takes more seconds. For the whole thing to occur takes more seconds. Finality will still be very fast though. So I'm looking forward to sharding. I think it's going to be fun.
Very exciting. All right, and then Leemon, the Hashgraph consensus protocol specifies a method to calculate a network assigned median transaction time. Would you consider also specifying in the protocol an inductive method, which would allow nodes to compute the time at which the network time was assigned, and at what time that time was assigned, etc., ad infinitum? Also, the Hashgraph white paper does not seem to specify which parents should be assigned to newly created events.
Great question. So this is what's cool about a Hashgraph. If we didn't have a Hashgraph, we would have to come to consensus, and then we'd all have to send everybody a note saying when I came to consensus, and we'd all have to send everybody a note that says when I know when I came to consensus, and that ad infinitum would be an infinite number of notes. But if you have a Hashgraph, it's a complete history. I can see when everybody learned information, and I can see when you learned about learning all the information, and I can see when Alice learned about you learning about all the information. And so I can see when you came to consensus, and I can see when Alice knew that you came to consensus, and I can see when Bob knew that Alice knew that you came to consensus. It's all in the Hashgraph. And we right now have streaming out all of our records and transactions into files that go to our mirror nodes, but we're also streaming out the events themselves. The Hashgraph itself is streaming out and uploaded to the S3 bucket, and you can get that, and you can do mining on the Hashgraph itself, not just on the list of transactions in order, but on how we all talk to each other and when we learn things, and you get really deep insight. I think there's a lot of fun things you could do doing data mining on the Hashgraph itself. And you could also see other things like internet weather. You could see who has fast computers and who has slow computers. You could see what kinds of pathologies happen. Actually, in my code, I have this program that prints out the Hashgraph on the screen and it scrolls up. And we use that for debugging because you can see with your eyes all kinds of patterns of how the computers are talking. It's just fascinating. So you get all that for free when you're using Hashgraphs as opposed to some other consensus mechanism. And it's a lot of fun. I really like that.
Great. Thank you, Leemon. All right, as we get towards the top of the hour, I have one last one for each of you, and we've saved some big ones for the end. Mance, we previously touched a little bit on the Shinhan Bank proof of concept that was announced last night on the in the US early this morning, Korea time. Can you give us just a little bit more insight on that and what they're doing?
Yeah. Well, fundamentally, the project was created to test the issuance and distribution of stablecoins. And they used HTS for that. And they also used HCS for audit of various parts of the process. And then they chose the financial use case of international remittances to be used, or to use the stablecoins with. And the POC was a fantastic success, as you kind of would expect. I mean, the bar is set pretty low today when we're considering the costs associated with international wiring money internationally, the amount of time it takes to complete the wire, an international wire, and the lack of transparency into what's happening in that process that can take days. And using Hedera, HTS and HCS, Shinhan, along with another major bank, completed this POC where they each created stable coins on each side in their local currencies, and tested a system where they were able to transfer those stable coins, and you exchange fiat for a local stable coin in the local currency associated with the yuan, for example, and send that to the other bank, and then do the reverse into the local currency with the other bank. So this is just the first step. You heard me earlier talk about things going viral. This is certainly one of those types of activities that could absolutely go viral. And it's not just because we're doing it. The whole market is moving in this direction. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. There are a lot of different architectural ways you could imagine the use of stable coins, or stable coins being used with various financial use cases. They've tested one, and we're very excited about it. I think that this is going to explode in terms of banks on a global basis beginning to do exactly what we've now seen Shinhan and this other bank do. And we're at the earliest stages. It's very exciting. Glad to have this piece of news out there, and looking forward to more coming in the months and quarters to come.
Very exciting. I know we have very much a global community here, so I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. I remember growing up, my mom would put cash in an envelope, and fingers crossed that it got to our relatives in Malaysia, because otherwise the cost of doing that, and then sort of the invisibility of, you send it, you cross your fingers, you pay $50 and you hope that it gets there. And that so this was the first time that I was able to share with her, a use case on DLT that she really got and was excited about.
Yeah.
Okay, Leemon. I remember, I'm going to date myself, but I remember almost 6 years ago, talking to you originally about your vision for shared worlds, and the swirl's vision and what that meant. Today, we are hearing a lot of discussions about the metaverse. We are hearing, one conglomerate try to sort of coin that phrase and own the metaverse. Seems a little counterintuitive. But what role do you think that the metaverse plays in your vision for shared worlds?
So shared worlds is the ability for anyone to just carve out a piece of cyberspace, the online world of their own, invite people to help them create and do things in that world of shared information, and then to be able to interoperate with others. So this is what Hedera has been pushing for the entire time. We're building the foundation for this sort of thing. If you're going to do this, what you'll end up with is small, maybe ad hoc networks of computers that are talking to each other and cooperating. And then when they have things that they want to commemorate permanently, they can use HCS to record it forever. or they can use HCS to even power them. They can be an AppNet. This is how shared worlds work. And so then what you can do is you can play games or whatever in your shared world, but you can have things of value within your shared world. And the things of value could be tokens. So our token service works. So you have our consensus service and our token service can be useful for this. And if you want to get really fancy, you can even use the smart contracts with it. Or you can just do a private network, a Hashgraph network that just does things on its own. You reach your own consensus. And then occasionally when you want to do something with these bigger assets, these tokens or whatever, then you reach out to Hedera and do it. So you can run it as an AppNet where everything is running through Hedera, or you can do it as a separate Hashgraph network and then just occasionally talk to Hedera and use HCS or HTS to do your actions on Hedera. This is the idea. And so what would you do? Well, you could create things, you could play games, you could have a stock market, you could have a Wikipedia. There's all sorts of things you could do in these shared worlds. One of the things you could do in these shared worlds is we all put on VR goggles and we get to explore a three-dimensional world that we share. Maybe that's what Metaverse means. I'm not actually sure what Metaverse means. Everyone seems to have a different definition. But VR is very cool. Being able to do things online is very cool. Being able to do things online where no single company can control it is very cool. Some people do not have that as part of their definition of Metaverse, but I think that's the way the Metaverse ought to work, is that maybe a company you're paying to host it on their servers in some sense, but they can't steal your assets because your assets are NFTs that are coined on Hedera. And so you're just using this other company to help you do your 3D world. But the real things of value are trustworthy. And even the rules of the game itself can be made trustworthy if you're using an AppNet using HCS, or if you're frequently sending things. You can imagine a first-person shooter where you're constantly getting points and constantly recording those points. And so once they're recorded into Hedera, they're there forever. There's all sorts of ways that you can do this. So Metaverse, I'm not sure what it means. Maybe it means VR. Maybe it means some of the vision of being able to share information across different platforms. But my vision of shared worlds is bigger, and the Metaverse is part of it. Absolutely. And I'm extremely excited. I have ideas about graphics that I've mentioned before. I think VR is a big thing. AR will be a big thing. This is the future. And it will be built on the ability to have rules enforced without having a single company control it, and for having things of value that you can trust. I'll give you one last example. I had an interview with someone who was a fashion designer, I think, and we were talking about virtual fashion things for your avatar. And you could imagine paying a large amount of money for a blouse or a handbag or something for your avatar that has a brand name on it. Well, the problem, of course, is that in cyberspace, nobody knows you're a dog. That's an old joke. In cyberspace, who knows that that brand name is not just, I typed it in and I put a fake brand name on it. Well, the only way to know that and have the true cachet of really the brand is if there's an NFT behind it. And if your computer, your VR goggles are automatically reaching out and talking to their computer and getting proof that they truly have that NFT in real time. And then you not only see the avatar with that label, but you see some kind of a mark saying, yeah, I've checked it, this is real. And so then you have the cachet of having that label. The whole world of our world is going to move into cyberspace and move into the metaverse. And things like the foundations are going to be things like tokens and NFTs and things that you can check automatically so that you can trust them. I can't wait. And we should talk more about this in the future. This is really cool stuff. And this has been our vision for 6 years, and now it's coming. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you, Leemon. And I will say, between the international remittances and between the vision for, shared worlds, this feels certainly more inclusive. This feels like something where we want this to be distributed, where we want everybody to be able to participate in it. This is not monolithic. This is something where we really want that engagement and feels like the right way for the universe to be going. So really quick, last top of the hour, favorite food from Thanksgiving meal.
Venison.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah.
I did like that.
Yeah.
Actually, there was this cauliflower casserole with lots of cheese and stuff in it. I really like that. But I also like the venison.
Can't go wrong with either of those things. I vote for all the different pies, as many desserts as you can. I'd like to thank you guys. I'd like to thank the community for joining us. We really appreciate you. We hope you have a safe and happy holidays. We hope you get to enjoy some time with your friends and family, and we will see you all in the new year.
Thank you.
Have a good new year. I'll see you next year.